new phone.
Oh, yeah, true.
I got nothing.
All right, you can go whenever you want.
Okay. Welcome to Human Services Counseling 508, and this is my interpersonal communication project. Hi, my name is Morgan Kane. These are a few pictures to introduce myself. Like I said, my name is Morgan Kane. I'm 26 years old. I am the program director at a group home in Lynchburg, Virginia. I'm currently pursuing my Master's of Arts in Human Services Counseling with a specialization in crisis response and trauma. My hobbies include running, baking, especially when I'm stressed, and spending time with friends and family. My favorite Bible verse is 1 John 3:18. And fun fact about me is I ran my first marathon last year in Charlotte, North Carolina. Through this course, I was able to spend a lot of time in self-reflection, learning about my own listening skills and how I listen as a person. Both my professional and personal life require me to become a better listener and constantly improve my listening skills. And my hope is that becoming a better listener, I can improve my influence both personally and professionally. Burley Allen said, when we fail to listen, we lose the opportunity to improve our professional and personal relationships. Listening is an important skill that we use daily, and our academic success, employment achievement, and personal happiness often depend on our daily listening skills. One thing we studied in this course is the behavior blend. The behavior blend is a concept that emerged from the DISC personality assessment developed by William Marston in the 1920s. Based on concepts originally accredited to Hippocrates around 400 BC, the DISC personality assessment purposes 4 temperaments. These temperaments come from the DISC personality assessment, where D stands for direct, demanding, decisive, and dominant. I stands for influencing, inspiring, and interested in people. S stands for steady, stable, shy, submissive, and specialist. And C stands for cautious, competent, and careful. Personality types can explain how we think, feel, and act as individuals. And Carbonell says that identifying these differences is vital to understanding our behavioral diversities. I thought one thing that was interesting was the difference in the DISC personality assessment of what's expected of me by others and what I actually am in my own personality. What's expected of me, it was labeled as an inspirational specialist, where what actually was me was the competent influencing specialist. This means that my basic motivation is recognition and approval. I desire prestige, friendly relationships, and opportunities to help others and motivate them. My weaknesses are time management, and often I'm too optimistic about situations. And the reality that I had to find was that being responsible is often more important than being popular. There are 2 communication barriers that I'd like to present in this PowerPoint, and those are the courtroom culture and a failure to listen to one thing at a time. One thing that Peterson said in his book, Why Don't We Listen Better, is that both emotions and thoughts are part of how we operate, but trying to describe behavior as either emotional or rational doesn't often seem to help. A failure to listen can result in misunderstandings, hurt feelings, confused instructions, loss of important information, embarrassment, and frustration. The first one I'd like to explore is the courtroom culture. A courtroom culture is when our cultural norms are attacked and we feel that we have to defend ourselves. Basically what happens in a courtroom culture is the talker, while talking, becomes an accuser and accuses whoever is listening of something that violates their cultural norms. And the listener, instead of actually listening and hearing what the talker is saying, they instead become a defender and are very defensive over whatever they're being accused of. Peterson went on to say that we often don't let ourselves get close to people who judge us, and those whom we judge stay away from us as well, especially in a courtroom culture. One example of the courtroom culture can be found in the movie Fireproof, when Caleb and Catherine have an example of fighting over much bigger issues, but it all stemmed over dinner, when Caleb accused Catherine of not having dinner ready and not working harder than he does, and instead of actually just dealing with the problems that were actually at hand, they became involved in this courtroom culture of fighting over dinner instead. That's just one example. There were many examples in that movie, as I'm sure you all saw. there are a couple strategies to combat the courtroom culture, and one of them is to move from a courtroom to a collaborative culture. This means that the collaborative culture is going to build up where a courtroom culture would try to put down both of the communication involvement. Collaboration is a win-win, and it seeks an environment of working together, where a courtroom culture means no one wins. There's a lose-lose situation. But if one person is interested in collaborating and actually listening to what the accuser is saying, validating those feelings and hearing them out and trying to fix their issue rather than defend their own, it becomes a lot easier for a collaborative environment to be made. One other strategy that would be helpful in a courtroom culture is to alternate between feelings and thoughts. If an accuser is coming to you and talking through whatever is bothering them and accusing you of something personally, it's helpful to help them see how their feelings are affecting their thoughts and their thoughts are affecting their feelings. So by asking, do you really think that? Okay, well, if that's true, how does that make you feel? You need to validate those feelings, and then you can actually get somewhere. In my own personal action plan to combat my personal and professional examples of courtroom culture, I plan to try to listen without defending, alternate between feelings and thoughts, and I want to let the talker know that they're being heard. The second communication barrier that I'd like to talk about is the failure to listen to one thing at a time. Stories can be improved by the influence of good listeners, and Peterson says, if I'm trying to sell you my point of view while you're talking and you're trying to get me to buy yours, we're both in trouble. Neither one of us is going to hear each other. One example that came to mind for this is the movie Big Fish. Throughout this son's life, he heard his father tell story after story about his wonderful adventures, and finally he got to the point where he didn't want to listen. He wanted to have certain expectations of his father, and his father, through having so many listeners, was able to improve his story over time and learn from it. When the son didn't want to listen, instead he just wanted to tell the father how he felt and explain his disapproval, the story started not sounding so wonderful and being more hard to hear. A couple resources and strategies in order to listen to one thing at a time include becoming a capable listener by using the 70-30 rule. There's a journal article that stated that good listening habits are needed to have successful communication, and skills have to be improved over time. And one thing that as a listener we can do is make sure that we're allowing the talker to talk for 70% of the time, and we're listening during that time, using that other 30% or less to only ask questions about clarifying and making sure that the listener feels heard. The second thing that as a listener we can do, trying to focus in on listening to one thing at a time and hear the actual message that the talker is trying to explain to us, is to use parathinking. Our brains react differently when we take our thoughts through our ears instead of just thinking them silently inside. Parathinking is helpful because you're explaining and just basically repeating what the talker is saying so that they can hear their own voice and what they're actually saying, and you can clarify that what you're hearing is correct. One thing we can do is when we hear someone else put our thoughts into their words, we discover a new level of clarity, objectivity, and validation that we can't get by ourselves. It's helpful to have someone listen to us, but that listener needs to make sure that they're listening and not doing 10 other things. Again, for my own personal action plan in this barrier of listening to only one thing at a time is I need to practice being a capable listener, both in my personal and professional relationships. Peterson said, a capable listener, like a midwife, helps people give birth to the feelings and the thoughts inside them. It often takes time for talkers to become clear about what they're trying to say, and listening can support that process. You have to also take one point of view at a time and use parathinking, and that's what I plan to do in my own personal. To conclude, basic conclusions. Listening takes time, but it's worth it. It takes work, but it's worth it. And it takes focus, but it is worth it. Thank you so much.